Welcome everyone back to another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son George. I was my mother's caregiver after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, so we started TogetherForSharon.com in her memory. Today's guest is someone that's I consider not just family, but has gone through some tougher times, but really has come out on top and really changing the world for the better, and in the area of dementia awareness, home care, and it kind of ties into Parkinson's a lot because I still think my mother might have had late onset dementia and also Parkinson's. So I wanted to welcome Tracy to the show. So really such a great honor to see you again. I usually say welcome for the first time, but I had the honor to be on your show. So really wanted to appreciate your time and having you back here to talk about these important topics.
George, thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I, for the people in your audience that don't know, am a four-time dementia caregiving survivor. I cared for my mom, dad, aunt, and uncle. I discovered through that journey that if you've seen one person with dementia, you've only seen one person with dementia, and there might have been some similarities, but no two people behaved the same way. They had other health issues, and so it was a real big learning opportunity for me because when I first found out they had, well, my mother had a health issue. I was 41 years old, which is, um, I considered that young because I had no life experience for caring for somebody that was older. And I didn't know anything about diseases, and it was just not in my toolbox. And so we learned pretty much by having a phone call from my dad saying he couldn't care for my mom anymore. And she had cancer, and the cancer surgery gave her dementia. And so when we came down to visit, because we didn't actually live in the same city at the time, um, we were we found out they were covering for each other, and we didn't realize exactly how bad it was, and didn't realize that the word fine meant I need help. But we didn't know that. So every time he kept telling us he was fine, we just assumed that really meant he was fine. So we ended up, as a result of that, we had like about a month to get my mom into a skilled care facility that could help her because she was at the tail end of her life. And they were living in a tiny little apartment, and there was just not enough room to care for her properly. And so that's what started our journey. And it was very, very challenging.
Yeah. Well, we send our love to you and the family, and we know it's not always easy. And although some of us, like myself, felt alone on the journey, you're not anymore. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Maybe we could also now kind of talk a little bit before we get to I always say we need a drum roll machine, but I just wanted everyone to say that this is this is Tracy's new book, and hopefully you can see it. Sometimes on Zoom it's hard, but I was honored to gain a copy and read a lot of the valuable information. And it's not just a book, it's also a great learning tool. If I was going through my kind of struggle with my mom as caregiver, because we don't have training, we just kind of thrown into it. I wish I had this book because I think it would have helped guide me and not feel alone. So maybe you could kind of tell us a little bit about how the book came about. And when we met, I didn't have a book. So I do want to thank you for all your kind of knowledge and all that you do. I always share unlike everything that you do, but I see you really reaching some important areas and groups around the world, which is really fabulous.
Well, thank you, George. So
I'll hold
when
it while you're talking.
when I first started, uh, I needed something to help me, and there wasn't really anything out there. And the worst part was when my dad came to live with us because he ended up going into a coma and being hospitalized, and then they wouldn't let us take him home because they thought we'd just put him back in his apartment. So it started a 5-month journey where he got sucked into the system, and I had no way of getting him out without all the legal paperwork, which I had a power of attorney, but it was not the right power of attorney to get custody of him. So it was all the things I did not know and that I failed at miserably that went into the book. And I created a toolbox because every book I read as I was on my journey trying to find the answers would have like one recipe here to help somebody when they were doing wandering, and another recipe over here to help them convince to bathe, and another, and I'm calling it a recipe, but I mean, it's really a step-by-step guide. But I couldn't find everything all in one place. And the 36-hour day, while it is a fabulous book, often too tired to be able to sit down and read it because it is about, oh, I don't know, 2.5 inches, 3 inches thick. It's just this, but it's a phenomenal book. So it's like, what can I do for others that would help me? So I started putting everything together, and I could not find anything that had the right kind of what I would call um, table of contents, because how do you find something if you don't know what it's called? And so that's why there's an 8-page table of contents at the front, because I wanted people that were caregiving to be able to run their finger down the page, find the challenge of the moment or of the day, turn to that page, and be able to have guidance on what they can try. I mean, it's just not an easy thing to do when you're trying to figure this out. And I also wanted to make sure it was resource heavy. So there's over 130 resources spread throughout the book and also collected at the back of the book in the appendix, so that if you can't remember where you read it, you can find it in the back of the book. I wanted to make sure it was easy because I know how stressful it is when you're caring for someone and you don't understand what's going on and you're not sure what you should do.
Thanks. And I love some of the topics. Speaking of the table, like laughter, which is something you don't think about when you're going through this. Also, even gun safety, because as you know, I'm in law enforcement, and also some of the other end of life topics that I often find, sadly, I don't know about in the dementia world, but Parkinson's community, they don't really want to talk about. That's why I do, because I think it's important to talk about tough topics. We even have a blog on it. But I think if you do tackle those topics, then it'll help a lot of individuals who might kind of shy away and not really want to know. Even with my book, as yours, it was not easy to write, but there's some tougher moments in it. I always tell people to skip that chapter because there's a lot of positive and uplifting moments, but maybe you shouldn't skip that chapter, because I think that it needs to be discussed. But it's just my opinion, not everybody else. The problem with Parkinson's, as you might be aware, it's a little different, I guess, than dementia, but they say you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. But my mother, as you know, as we spoke, didn't have anything but Parkinson's or possibly dementia. Maybe you could tell everyone listening a little bit about dementia, just in case they're not kind of understanding of what it entails, because I do have experience with hallucinations and delusions, but it's a topic I find that it's kind of really just coming to the forefront. I don't know if you saw recently, Ryan Reynolds, the famous actor, just came out to discuss his father and struggle with Parkinson's, but specifically the hallucinations and dementia were a major, downfall. So I think that's bringing a lot more light to those areas. So maybe we could touch a little bit about that.
Sure. Let's first of all start with the term dementia. Think of it like a spectrum, like autism. It's the uniting symptom between all the diseases that fall under it. And like Alzheimer's is just one portion of it. Now, it's the one that is the most highly diagnosed, but there's a dementia facet to also Parkinson's disease. Not everyone gets it, but there is that facet. Also, Lewy body is also connected to it. And these two, particularly because of where it affects the brain, tends to cause the most with hallucinations. And the problem with hallucinations is, as family members, we don't necessarily realize that's what's going on. And also, there's the emotional component because we have somebody that we're losing right in front of us, and they have been our rock for our entire lives. So when you are losing that connection, that thread, you're going to fight like heck to save that connection. However, now they can't come back to where we are. We have to go to where they are. So if they're having a delusion or a hallucination, we need to get into their shoes and walk them through to a place of safety, because at this point we are their anchor, and but we have to be emotionally willing to go with them to bring them back to safety. So if you've got somebody that is in the bathroom and they look in the mirror and they don't recognize themselves and they think there's a stranger there, and you keep telling them, "No, mom, that's you. Don't you recognize you? See, I'm standing right next to you. Don't you recognize yourself?" No, they don't. So we have to understand that uh, instead of saying that's you, we're going to say, "I'll take care of it. Let's get you out of here so that they can't harm you or see you, or and I'll just make sure they go away and never come back." Then you walk back in, and the first time this happens, throw a wet paper towel over that mirror. When they come back in, it's no longer a mirror. It's just a spot on the wall. So you just need to be able to find things that will bring them to a place of safety. And then once you know whatever the problem is, now I just use a mirror because it's very common. But you can remove mirrors so that they don't see them. Now, if it's something where they're talking to somebody and they think they're talking to their mother or their grandmother because they now look like that person did at that same time, or maybe they think they're talking to their father or grandfather, whoever the person is, let them do it unless they get upset. It's comforting to them if they're just having a conversation with somebody that they've lost, and don't tell them that it's not them. I mean, that that's not that person they think they're talking to. Just listen to them and enjoy the fact that they had this wonderful connection and conversation. But again, that's something that's really, really hard for us as the caregiver to allow to have happen if we haven't been able to move it along and see actually how it works.
Yeah, even reliving some of those moments is not easy. I'm going to share a little bit before we get into this. Brings back some moments. I know my mother, first time I ever even heard of delusions, hallucinations, we found her at 4 a.m. moving her furniture out of her home because she was in fear the Nazis were inside and they were going to harm her. And that was my introduction to the world of hallucinations and delusions. So it's something he can never be prepared for. I never even dreamt I would need to hear of that. But I'm grateful again for the book and for all that you do because you really bring some well needed awareness. I wanted to kind of shift for a moment to this amazing website. You might recognize it. But this is everyone, please support Tracy by going to Tracy Cram Perkins.com. Again, we'll add that to in the show, but TracyCram Perkins.com. And there you can see so many incredible resources. You can order the copy, I believe, of the book. And maybe Tracy, you could tell us a little bit more about the website and feel free to direct me if you need me to point out any specifics.
Oh, okay. So on the money part for me is the part that I think is the biggest gift is the resources page. I keep adding resources to that as I find them. So I will regularly update this where I can't update my book. You can go there and find out where other things are. So like a lot of people don't like to talk about continence issues. I have a section in there where there are different types of continence supplies and resources where you can find them. So there's all sorts of different things on there so that if you need to look something up quickly, you can just click on the button or the menu item, scroll down to it, and get tools to help you. For wandering, for instance, I have a list of different products on there that can help you keep track of your loved one because i- in my own world, my dad was an escape artist. He escaped from five of the seven facilities he was, I'm going to say incarcerated in because that's how he felt, um, that cared for him before we could get him to come live with us. And they had to track him down. And at that point, there was not a low jack something that you could put in his clothing that would go with him that you would know where he was, or jewelry or whatever else. Now we have all of these really amazing tools that can be worn as jewelry, can be as an insert in a shoe. It could be something where they can not be invasive to them, where it's not a problem for them to wear it, but it helps you find them if they get away. Because my dad's most epic escape from a skilled care facility happened when they I'm gonna laugh because it takes time and distance to make this funny, but my dad was definitely a Houdini. He had escaped 3 times by walking some of the ladies who were at the skilled care facility, visiting their husbands, and they were leaving to go back to their car. They were elderly, so he walked them to their car so that they would be safe because it was kind of a sketch neighborhood, and then he'd go for a walk. Well, after that, it took 3 tries before they figured out how he was escaping. The next one, he waited until his roommate went to a physical therapy appointment, and I'm sorry I'm laughing, it's really horrible, but it's funny now, but he noticed a flaw in the way the plate glass windows in his room were mounted. Now, you have to understand that even though he had moderate Alzheimer's disease, he still had the skills from his, job, from his career, and so what he did is he stayed in his pajamas and slippers, and he waited, he closed the door partway. So he left it open so they could see in, but they couldn't see the window next to his bed. And then he unscrewed all the windows, lifted the plate glass window out, climbed out, and screwed it back in and mounted it properly. So he actually fixed the window and went for his walk. But so his roommate was gone for 1 full hour. they couldn't find him anywhere, and they don't have cameras facing patient windows because of privacy issues. So then they had to call 911 and report him missing, which is another whole ball of wax for self-reporting. But it wasn't until 30 minutes later, 5 miles from the facility, so this is a 90-minute walk, he made it 5 miles. He got to Pacific Highway South to the entrance of Interstate 5. And now he was tired and he sat down on the guardrail. But what caused everyone to call 911 was because he crossed 5 lanes of traffic against the light in pajamas and slippers. So the sheriff's department was getting call after call after call. But our lucky break came when the sheriff that came and picked him up, he had a family member with dementia, and so instead of yelling at him, he said to him, "You look tired." And my dad said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Would you like a ride home?" And he said, "Yes." And he goes, "Well, have you ridden in a police car before?" And my dad goes, "No." And he goes, "Oh, come on, sit in the front seat. I'll tell you all about it." It was the best time my dad ever had. So they get back to the place, and we're all standing there in the lobby waiting for him to come back because now you've got a whole panicked family. And he is so happy when when the social worker asked him, "Well, how did you escape?" He was happy to show them because it was the first time he was treated like an adult.
Mhm.
And in that, he took all of us down there. He showed us where the flaw was on the window, how it was mounted incorrectly, and how to fix it. The maintenance group went through and found that 30% of the windows were mounted incorrectly, and they fixed them. So he solved a problem they didn't know they had. But it didn't change the way they treated him because they put a wristband on him, and anytime he went near a door or a window, they would scream at him instead of redirecting him away from the area. So it's y- the fact that he could escape like that, and he did escape one more time before we got to bring him home. But those are the things you have to be aware of that can happen. And again, you don't expect someone with dementia to be able to move that fast. Now, I can't say that someone with Parkinson's might be able to do this, but I can tell you for sure that somebody with Alzheimer's disease who is still physically fit enough can get 5 miles if they're fit enough, or can get in a car and drive for 8 hours and think they've only been gone for 30 minutes. So it's important that we recover somebody who does wander off within 24 hours, or they could pass away from exposure to the elements or from a fall. So
How
it's just something to keep in mind.
how many years did he have dementia?
Uh, well, from when he got the diagnosis for the moderate Alzheimer's disease until he passed, it was 7 years. But prior to that, we believe he probably had it for 10 years prior, and we just didn't recognize it. We just thought it was him getting older. Because as we look back on it, we started seeing the evidence where we didn't recognize it before.
And one of the toughest decisions anyone has to make, family or not, is deciding to put someone in a home. How many
Hmm.
years were you able to keep them at home? And as I know, I kept my mother at home, but there were days, or in my book, I write that I kind of was screaming internally that I can't handle it anymore. But she made me swear. So, and then the cost, which we would not have the time, but we could probably do a whole show just on the financial burden. We were spending about 12,000 a month for some months. So just curious, at what point, did you and your family or you decide, okay, this is where I need some help and we have to put him in a home?
My breaking point came when I am not a medical practitioner or any type of clinician, and I knew my limit. And when it got to the point where I was so tired that I could not get his medication to him properly, that was the time when I knew I needed more help because his health was starting to decline and I couldn't manage the additional things that were being added to it because I was still working full time like you were. I was still doing, or I don't know if you were, but I was still working full time. I was taking care of my dad in my house. So I was working from home. And then we had, I mean, it's just a series of things because there was a point when my dad was afraid. And for 6 months, he came to my door every single night while we were sleeping, and he would rap on the door and call my name until I got up and to come help him. And that would repeat every 30 minutes until he felt safe. So, um, there were some nights when I got no sleep at all, and other nights it calmed down after 6 months when I finally started figuring out what the triggers were. And that's why I also have on my resources page the meltdown trigger list. This is a really valuable tool. So it's under useful forms, and it will give you an idea of how to figure out what is triggering an event, because it's really going to drive you crazy when there are things that are happening and it doesn't matter what disease they have. But if they are melting down and they are not feeling safe and they can't explain it, these are the clues to help you figure out what's the trigger and how to circumvent it, and then teach everybody else around you what you can do to help them get back to calm, because then you have a respite tool so that you have a piece of paper you can hand off to your brother or sister or friend or whoever it is, and you say, okay, if this happens, at the bottom you've got the distraction techniques that work. So if your mom's crying and she won't stop, but you know that you're moving her to a different room, wrapping her in a blanket, handing her a stuffed toy to pet is the cure. Make sure everyone knows that. Also let them know what the triggers are so they don't accidentally trigger an event and become the scary person instead of the safe person. So it's just, and that is one thing that I think that is just one of the best tools on my website.
I appreciate it. And also very important is if you want to gain a copy of the book, you can also think you can they reach the website and also find a link to the book?
Uh, I think I just redid my website a little bit, so I'm not sure if the link is still there or not. I'll have to double check. If it's not, I will add it back
No
on
problem.
'cause
Well, if not, you can go to Amazon, everyone, and just type in dementia home care, or just type in Tracy's name. That's probably the best way. And then here you can see it's a very, very reasonable, and it's a big book. It's not like for $15. Like you can see here, a lot of
that weighs
information
a
and
pound.
valuable to have. It's good for a workout too if you're a home caregiver. You can, as you're reading it and taking care of your loved one. But I really appreciate that. Such an important journey story, and I'm grateful as usual for your friendship. I wanted to kind of turn now to a little bit more about you, so the listeners and viewers can learn a little bit more about Tracy. And you are allowed to skip a question if you don't want to, but hopefully, you'll enjoy them. But can you list 3 words that describe who you are?
Oh, tender loving care.
That's easy. It's a lot of Elvis in there. Another, I wish I had sound effect for that one. Actually, it would probably be sued if I played the clips, but other than that, what is one moment or one most memorable moment that stands out through most of your work, and for awareness, that you could share with us?
I would say the day I got my first fan letter and somebody thanked me for writing the book. That was it was so honoring for me because my father was the one that said to me when we got him home, he said, "Tracy, I have Alzheimer's disease and not the plague. What does it take to be treated like a human being?" And then he gave me permission once we got towards the end to write about it. So I think for me, that was like, okay, Dad, we did this.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know if my mother, if you met her today, it would be funny. But she always used to say, "Don't waste your time, spend it with your family." So I don't know what my mother would think, especially because she was very private. But I felt it was something that needed to be out there. Hopefully, if she's looking down on your father, they're okay with one of the books.
They're
You need
probably
their
fist bumping.
approval. This one's an important question to me. Of course, you're a caregiver too, but what tips can you give those caregivers listening? And also, who's there to support Tracy during times of struggle? Because we all go through it. I like to bring out the people from behind the scenes and also send our love and thanks to them as well.
Okay, I'm gonna answer that last half first.
Sure.
Um, I had a lot of support. My husband, Daniel, was my rock and my hard place, and he was also the best bird's eye view I could have asked for because he was a great mediator between my dad and me because we had the same personality.
Mhm.
So as you can imagine, that might not cause any headbutting whatsoever.
Mhm.
So anyway, he was one of them. My friend Karen Munger, she was my college roommate. She also is a medical practitioner, gave me training on how to do diabetes care and management. She also helped me with diet and nutrition so that I could learn how to take care of him properly. And then all the people that are listed in the acknowledgments of my book, which is a little long, but I want to say thank you to every single one of them. So I won't list them now, but if you do read the book, understand that these are the people that had the greatest impact in helping me. And and then of course my sister Sandy, my sister Gail, and my aunt Beverly were also there and helped with respite care and all the other things that you could think of that you needed help with. Um, they were there for me. And
Thank
then oh, go ahead.
No, we send our love to them too, because a lot of the time they're again behind the scenes, but think they deserve some thanks too. So thank you.
And then I forget now I've forgotten the first part of the question. I'm
Or
sorry.
we should split it up, but they're also important. We never have enough time. But what tips could you give caregivers since you were a caregiver? Usually I'm asking this to someone who might not be, but we do have people, individuals and people watching that are also caregivers, not just those diagnosed.
Okay, you mentioned earlier about my chapter on laughter, and I think laughter is the most powerful tool when you're doing caregiving, is to share those moments of joy, to remember that mistakes are not mistakes. You just learned one more way how not to do something. And then there are going to be funny things that happen. Celebrate the collateral beauty of those things and laugh with them. Because, again, everything you do that brings joy and laughter to your heart eases the burden of caregiving just a little bit more. And it helps lower your blood pressure. And it also creates really fabulous memories.
I agree. I actually had a gentleman, and his name is Phil Jerky, but that's not his real name, but he's a comedian who has Parkinson's, and I couldn't make a joke about it, but letting him do it, it's pretty fascinating, and you get to smile a little during the tougher times. So I definitely agree with the laughter. Here's another. This one's a little tougher, but is there something you might have done differently looking back the past 10 years?
I'm going to say no. I would not be here today if I had done anything differently, and I wouldn't be able to help people like I am now if I hadn't failed and fallen on my face and done everything wrong first. So I'm going to say those were the best lessons I could have ever had, and I wouldn't want to change any of them.
And if you were asked to write a script to a movie about your life story, what would you call it?
My irreverent guide to dementia care.
No. This is a off-topic question, but I don't know if this was your first book, but I know you're having great success. Do you ever find, like I do with the media and even publishing, a tough time to really help you share your journey and story because it's just there's not enough awareness for dementia, for Alzheimer's, especially for Parkinson's. So just curious, how do you break that mold? Obviously, social media is important, but I know you get a lot of likes and things, and it's definitely that's something I admire, but I'm just curious for the smaller guy or gal out there thinking about even writing or just getting their story out. What do you recommend to gain success?
Well, there's a lot of different things you can do based on your personality. So I am obviously a little more outgoing and gregarious, so I don't have a problem talking to people, and I personally volunteer my time at my local Ace Hardware so that I can teach people about what I'm doing, and that has gained me some of the traction that I have now because I want to make sure people understand how to make their home more dementia friendly so that they don't have to go through all the things I went through, which I don't even want to talk about at the moment. But there's a lot of things that you can do, including learning how to contact the media. Now, if you have boatloads of money, you can contact authorsuccess.com and they can literally take your book and walk you through and teach you how to get on television shows, how to get interviews, how to do TED Talks, and they can coach you through all of that. But it costs a boatload of money. So if you're not, somebody that has $20,000 in your pocket, I would suggest that you want to do it the old-fashioned way and choose something like signing up for Hero, which is Help Every Reporter Out. I'm trying to remember now if you type in Help Every Reporter Out, it should get you to the correct website. It's by Peter Shankman. He did it originally as Hero, but that was purchased and now it's been shut down. So he created a new one. And that gives you he puts out emails every 3 times a day with requests from journalists. If you know the answer, you are allowed to reach out to the journalist or actually reach out to him, answer the question, he'll forward to the journalist. If that answers their question, they'll contact you directly, and then you can be quoted, and this will give you traction because now people know who you are. So that's another tool that makes it a little bit easier to get out there. There's also learning how to be a guest on radio. And Alex Carroll has a website that I'm trying to remember at the top of my head, and I'm not. Um, oh, good heavens. But he teaches you how to, if you type in Alex Carroll, and I think it's I will email this to you, George, so that you can put it in the notes, but I can't remember what it's called. But he teaches you how to do radio and podcast interviews, how to correctly pitch a story idea, how to approach someone, how not to be obnoxious, because half the time we don't realize that what we're asking is inappropriate because we don't know. So
Yeah.
he coaches you and he has a book that will take you through every single step. And then you can start contacting larger radio stations and he will actually give you information on how to write your pitch, how to title your talks so that you will understand better how to reach out to people and actually attract more attention.
Thank you. That's amazing, and definitely inspiring. I just wish there was more time in the day. So, I think I checked all those off. There's no way I'm gonna be able to, but I appreciate it. And then, is there any other areas you wanted to kind of touch on before we wrap up? Because there's so much to really get to, but I'm glad we at least were able to share your incredible journey and also the amazing things you're still doing. And I'll definitely be following along as your journey continues.
Well, I would say if you are doing caregiving, uh, particularly if you're doing something with someone who does have some form of dementia, um, give yourself permission to take care of yourself. If you do not do that, you will pass before the person you are caring for. So give yourself to, and I know this sounds pie in the sky, but you are allowed to take care of yourself and go out for a 10-minute walk or go out for a 15-minute walk or go get a cup of coffee. You are allowed to take care of yourself and give yourself time and space. If you don't do that, again, you are going to have health issues that you don't expect because we as caregivers, especially with somebody with dementia, put everyone else ahead of ourselves except ourselves. So if you take time 5 minutes to breathe. Even in my book, I've got breathing exercises so that if you have that moment where you can't get away because you know that they'll get out the door, you can at least step back and do breathing exercises. And they might even do the breathing exercise with you. But put a timer on your phone for 5 times a day to breathe. If you can do nothing else, do breathing exercises for 5 minutes, 5 times a day. It will lower your cortisol.
Thank you. And then finally, how can everyone reach you? And also, if you could leave the Parkinson's community and dementia community with some words of encouragement, what would those be?
Well, okay, if you want to reach me, you can reach me through tracycramperkins.com. I encourage you to sign up for my newsletter. It will give you 10 steps to calming aggressive dementia behavior, and you'll receive that immediately upon signing up. As far as for the dementia and Parkinson's community, keep reaching out. We are like what cancer was 40 years ago. The more we do to advocate, the sooner we will get help.
I appreciate it. I have a little message for you and everyone listening. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with Tracy, will advocate for you, and together I feel our voices are so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started because every time I see inspiring work like yours, kind of rejuvenates me to get up and no matter what I'm going through, keep fighting for a cure, not just for Parkinson's, but also for dementia and so many others. I wish no one had to go through the battle that you, your family has, or my family, and that's why we do this for awareness. And everyone, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Tracy. Everyone, please head to Amazon, pick up a copy of the book. I have it again here. I love it. So there you go. Not just saying it. I don't always have the book, so it's pretty cool. And then really just this conversation I always end with has to continue. I'll be sharing this more than once. You know, it's not just about us meeting today and then saying goodbye and good luck, until we find a cure and reach all those individuals out there who might feel alone like we might have during the caregiving process or after. We have to keep this fight up. So I just want to thank you again for joining us, and I hope there's many more to come.
George, thank you. I have been honored to be here and I would love to come back.
Uh, Appreciate it. Well, thank you everyone for listening again. Please share this. Please support Tracy. I'll be following along with you. And this has been another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George. Stay tuned. Many, many more important areas that we have to cover. And again, this fight has just gotten started. We're not even close to where I wish we were. And we do it all in our memory of your father, my mother, and all those we've lost due to these diseases. So keep hope and keep fighting. Thanks, everyone.